Welcome, welcome. It is Thursday, and that means it's time for event domination. This is one of my favorite things to do because running my conference and scaling it has totally changed my life. I never would have thought I'd be doing what I'm doing now. And I have a lot of thanks to give to my conference for that. So today I'm going to be sharing exactly how you can find the perfect venue for your conference or your workshop. Because let's face it, the venue you choose, the venue you pick has a big impact in terms of how people perceive your event, their experience when they're there, and also the cost and the budgeting plays into that. So to start things off, I thought it would be interesting to share the real story behind the venue for our first conference, which was the multifamily conference. And if you don't know the story, lockdowns had just happened. And I was sitting watching Shark Tank with my now fiance, and Kevin O'Leary was just grinding this guy on the value of his business. And I decided that at that moment, I wanted to run a real estate conference with Kevin O'Leary as a speaker. Now, I'd been to a lot of real estate events before that, and I hated them. I hated them. Why? Because they were all the same. Everybody rented out the same hotel ballroom. Everybody sat at these round tables. You always had lunch in the hallway. Everybody wore the same name tags, and you saw the same speakers over and over and over again. And you would always have that podium with the two PowerPoint slides. And I hated events with a passion. And I thought I could do a better job. Now, in retrospect, I had no idea what I was doing, but we figured it out. And we've done a really good job with it because we've been able to scale. And now we've brought in guys like Kevin O'Leary, like I said, Robert Herjavec, Jordan Belfort, Alex Rodriguez, Grant Cardone, like some really, really big heavy hitters. And we've got some really cool people lined up that I can't even talk about right now for 2025. Now, why did I tell that story? Well, because we were in the middle of lockdowns, and especially in Canada, things were pretty onerous in terms of the lockdowns. So I had decided to launch this conference. I needed a venue. Now, I had no idea what I was looking for in a venue. So I was making inquiries, but my challenge at the time was everything was closed. So it made it really hard to find a venue if nobody would let you into the building. So we had Kevin O'Leary on board at that point, but we needed a place to hold this thing. So how did we get into the venue we were in the first year? And it was actually a hockey arena. So I refereed in the OHL for a number of years, and the Brampton Battalion played at what is now the CAA Center. It was used to be the Powerade Center. And I thought it would be cool to do like a concert type of setup, stage on the floor. You have floor seating, and then you have seating in the bowl. Now, there were other venues that probably would have worked a lot better, but they wouldn't even let us in. So the CAA Center, not to get anybody into trouble, but the CAA Center was the only venue where they snuck us in the back door multiple times to take a look, do the tours, get all the setups, everything else, especially government, owned properties, not a chance. Like everything was closed. So we ended up in the venue we were in out of necessity, because that was literally the only venue that would sneak us in with the size. So why do I say that? Well, because in a perfect world, you have a lot of selection, but sometimes you just have to use what you have. Now, fast forward to today, we take up a lot of space. Like we need, like our square footage requirements are insane. So now we're at what I would call the premier conference facility in the country, the Metro Toronto Convention Center, top tier venue. But now we're at the size where there's only a couple places that can handle the number of people in our setup. I want to paint the picture. So in our first year, we had COVID lockdowns, we had limited selection, but now because of our requirements, we still have the same limited selection. It's just different venues because, there's only a handful of places in the area that can deal with an event at our scale and with our production levels and all that type of thing. So I just want to make it clear, if you're just embarking on launching your first conference or workshop, or you're trying to scale it, because our bread and butter is, we'll help, like with Conference Accelerator right here, we help events scale from 3 to 700 people, and we help them scale into the thousands. Like, that's what we do, because we've figured out that model, and we'll implement our systems that we use and integrate with your team, and help you guys do that. So that's what we do on the conference consulting side. But a lot of people, they just think, oh yeah, there's a million venues out there. Well, there's really not. Like, we had the issues first year when we were smaller and new, and then we have issues now because we're larger and we have specific things that we need. And then if you're a mid-size event, like, there's competition and there's booking, date conflicts, all that type of stuff. So I guess in the actual, I just want to make sure you understand that you're never going to have a large selection of venues if you're looking for the right one. So what are you actually looking for? Like, what are you looking at? Well, a number of things. So number one, foremost, you have to look at location and travel. If you're looking for large numbers of people, you have to make it really, really easy to get there. So city selection matters for sure, but then where in the city is the venue? So for us, Metro Toronto Convention Center, right downtown, you've got an airport that you take a tunnel through, and you're right there downtown. You've got the major train station, Union Station, like 5 minutes of walking down the street. Really, there you've got all the hotels close by, all the food. You're downtown in a major metro center. Great location. Now, there's cons with that too. Parking is not free. It's definitely not free. And there's a parking garage. Then you have costs of hotels, which go up because now you're in a downtown in a major international city. You're going to pay a lot of money for hotel costs. So there's pros and cons. Now, could you go close to an airport? Yeah. With us, we chose to go downtown because that gives our event more selection in terms of ancillary events. So, for instance, one year we rented out the CN Tower, then we rented out a nightclub, then we rented out the Art Gallery of Ontario. So we like to do outside things with our VIP attendees, and being downtown works really well. Now, so you'll have to take a look at your city, but you want to make sure travel's good, and then you have to look at amenities, like what's close by and where are you taking your event with off-site events, that type of thing. Then in terms of, once we figured that out, hey, are we in the right spot? Now we have to get into the specifics, the specifications of the actual venue. AV. So depending on the level of production you're running, you're going to have certain things that the venue needs. So for us, we have this huge, it's almost 200 feet. It's a screen that curves around. We've done that for the past 2 years. Setup's really, really cool. We need ceiling height, number one. We need rigging points, number two. And what I found is if you go into typical convention centers, that type of thing, or ballrooms, like hotel ballrooms, the ceiling height's going to be low. So that really limits you in terms of what you can do. So you're going to have lots of floor mounted type of stuff, and you're not going to have that height that gives, scale to your production setup. So you really have to consider, okay, well, with this venue, is it constraining what we can do? Are we able to run the level of show production that we want to run here? And, for us, when we were looking at a new venue after the first year, we figured out really quickly that a lot of the venues, they just couldn't handle the level of, production that we wanted to bring to it, because, ceiling height, rigging points were an issue, like a whole host of things. And then also, when you're looking at venues, a lot of venues like, conference centers, that type of thing, they'll have in-house AV. Now, we just had the situation with an event coming up in October. So 10X stages. So Pete, Grant, myself are running this in October in Toronto. AV in-house, are you forced to use the in-house AV? because, you know, we've got a company that we've built a relationship with. We really like working with them. You know, are we able to bring them in, or is that going to cause contract issues? Is that going to kill it? You have to figure this stuff out when you're shopping for venues, because, you know, if you find a great production company who can do the AV for you, you want to stick with them, right? So when you're looking at venues, it's not just location. It's not just, oh, like this venue looks pretty. Hey, like can the rigging points hold the load you need to? Like that's going to be on the drawings. Do you have the ceiling height requirements? Are you able to, like, it even gets crazy with us. So if we have VIPs, because we bring in some pretty heavy names, you know, how do we get them from the green room up to the stage in a safe way where they're not walking through people? So what are the back doors? So one of the things we do in the venue is we do with our security team, we do that initial site visit, and we're thinking of, hey, you know, like where do we move this person, the VIP, from this room, get them up to the stage, get them back without being seen, or if something happens, where do we exit? Like all of that stuff has to go into it. And what I found is with, you know, just your typical hotel ballroom, you don't have it, right? So if you're trying to run a large scale event with a lot of people, you have to have these plans in place behind the scenes. You know, I even remember our second year, we had somebody find their way backstage, right? Like that's not what you want. Like they can't be in the green room. So you have to plan for that. So how does the venue set up? Like what's the floor plan like, and how can you put things in place to prevent those things from happening? Now, connected with that, in terms of venue requirements for AV production, if they have in-house, most venues are going to have in-house food and beverage. Now, I liken this to Disneyland. Once you're in Disney, you know, you are at their mercy. You are going to pay like $7 for a bottle of water. You are going to pay, you know, $14 for a slice of pizza. They don't care because you're a hostage in Disney, because you're not going anywhere. Once you're in, you're in. Venues work the same way. Once you're in, you have to run all the food and beverage through them most of the time. So for us, we're paying ridiculous money, right, to have bottles of water backstage for our speakers. You know, our attendees are forced to pay, you know, whatever the posted rate is for their sandwich, because the venue has a monopoly on food and beverage. So again, this is where you have to do your pros and cons and weigh things. Is you know, is the location, is what the venue provides worth the cost that comes that's associated with it? And the cost is, you know, maybe AV in-house requirements. Is it, hey, food and beverage, you're stuck, you're hamstrung in terms of like just these specific options, and you're going to pay through the nose. And this is what you have to figure out. Now, on the plus side, having a larger venue, they're used to feeding a lot of people. They've got the facilities. If you go to a smaller place, or maybe you're bringing in outside catering to feed people, now you're in a situation where, well, maybe they're not used to feeding like a couple thousand people, or, you know, a couple hundred people, whatever it is. So like I said, there are pros and cons with it, but especially for us, like, you know, food and beverage is something we're always trying to improve. But again, we're kind of stuck because the venue has a monopoly, and there's only so much they allow you to do because you're in Disney. So you're paying, if you want a Red Bull, because we had Jordan Belfort this year, you know, he wanted a lot of Red Bull. Well, we had a special order Red Bull, and we weren't allowed to just buy a couple cases and bring it in, because that would be against the rules. So the venue had to order it, and then you pay a ridiculous surcharge just for the privilege of drinking Red Bull in the venue. That's the way it is. But if you don't ask these questions up front, and I remember when we first started, I had no idea that what went into like food and beverage and all the nuances. So we learned a lot in our first year. But yeah, if you're just starting out, you have to ask these questions and get them all itemized and laid out in the contract so everybody is clear, right? Or else it just turns into a gong show. So some other things in terms of venue, right? You want to look at the flow of the space. So for us, The way our venue's laid out, you walk in to the main floor, we have registration, you go up these escalators, and then you have, like, we have our exhibition area, we have our main stage area. You want to work on flow. And this is something we're always looking at. And every year, this is one of the things where you make a tweak, you make a change, and then you have to look at the impacts and how it changes, because there's always going to be changes, and people will react differently than what you thought might happen. So you're always kind of massaging and tweaking, and then you're seeing what happens, and then the next time you're going to run it slightly differently and see what happens, and maybe it works for the better, maybe not, and you're always tweaking. You want to have really good flow, especially in registration. So when you're walking in, depending on the size of your crowd, you want to think of, okay, we have, these many attendees. That means we need these many registration stations. And, at our peak, we're probably going to have X number of people in line. Can they queue? Is there space for the queue? Is it going to get stuffy? Is there lots of space? So for us, like, we're fortunate in that our venue is large enough where it doesn't feel super crowded. But if you're in a small hotel ballroom and you got people crammed in that hallway, it's not going to feel good, right? It's going to feel very disorganized and jumbled together. But you take the same type of crowd and put it in the right kind of space, you don't have those issues anymore. So you always want to look through for that. And then this kind of ties in with, sightlines and experience. So I remember when we were looking for a new home, there were a couple venues where they met our size and rigging requirements, but we had lots of pillars in the way. So the way their ceiling was constructed was you had lots of pillars, and that's going to hit your sight lines. And, even we've got an event coming up where we've got pillars in place. That's just the way the venue is. And that's very common. We're fortunate at MTCC, our current one, where, it's pillar free. So I think it's the country's, largest pillar free area, like, in the whole country, which is amazing. It makes sightlines really easy to deal with. But, if you're not in that venue, now you're going to end up with sightline issues, and you're going to have pillars. And how does that impact audience, enjoyment? If you're stuck behind the pillar, how's your seating plan? Now you're going to cannibalize seats and lose seats because of you have obstructions and all that type of thing. So, like, venue is just a lot more than hey, like, we need a place. Like, you have to think about all of this type of stuff. And then, this impacts your sales as well. So especially on the sponsorship side, if you're going after sponsors for an event and they ask you, hey, well, what's the venue? And you say, hey, it's like this hotel, like the Holiday Inn, automatically people have a certain perception of your event, right? Because it's just the way it is. But if you say, hey, we're at this venue, and that is the venue in the city to go, that's where all the serious shows go, automatically, before they even gotten a handle on exactly what you do, you're already elevated in their mind, because now you have credibility based on your event, right? And that's part of what we call the gravitational mass that you have to build. Like, you have to have the right speakers, the right venue, the right sponsors to get that mass, and that's going to attract other people in. So for us, when we made the move from CAA to MTCC in our second year, you're talking with new sponsors. Oh, where are you guys at? Oh, Metro Toronto Convention Center. And they're like, okay. And you can tell, they're like, oh, well, this is a serious show. If we said we were at the Best Western, different story, right? And this is why, at least in my experience with previous events, you just go to all the same type of stuff and nothing stands out. They're all the same. Right? And then if everything's the same, you're competing on price, you're commoditized. And that's why in my space, the real estate event space, there's a million, free or almost free events. Like, there's an event coming up, I think it's September, October now this year. They're handing away like 1,000 free tickets. Like that's what happens. So you have to stand out and separate yourself from the pack and differentiate yourself. And venue makes a huge statement. And I can tell you, like, our second year, when we had returning attendees who came to the first year event at CAA, and they walked in and saw the production level and the size, it was like, oh, wow. So, and that's what you want. It's like, whoa, like this is cool. You're making a huge impact. And that's the type of feel you want when people come into your venue. So, and then you want to cover a couple other things. So like contract terms, payments, what's the payment schedule? Can you pay, in a 2-pay, 3-pay, 4-pay leading up to the event? What are the terms there? How do they charge food and beverage? Is it paid up front? Do they do net 30 terms for food and beverage? Like all the contract type of stuff. And depending on the event, and the venue, you're going to get different things. But I can tell you, if a venue's trying to win your business, they're going to be a little bit more flexible with the terms. If they're a major metro event and they're jam-packed all year round, well, guess what? Like you got to kind of follow exactly what they do, because there's not going to be any leeway. But yeah, like venue, huge impact. And we've learned a lot in terms of venue and how to deal with venues appropriately. So if you are looking for a venue, if you need help kind of like structuring your event so it's scalable, and you need help, like finding the right speakers, helping to win the right sponsors, setting up the event for success, how to run the ads, how to actually convert the ads, how to run a ticket sales team, that type of thing, just go to theconferenceaccelerator.com. And we can definitely help you out. You'll book a call with our team, and if it's a fit, like we'll be able to help you out. If not, that's okay too. We're happy to point you in the right direction. So, with that being said, venue, huge impact. We've done our fair bit of venue shopping these days for that. It's a lot of fun shopping for venues, but it's very, very important. So hope this was helpful, and I will see you next Thursday for event